Washington is tightening the noose, this time not with missiles, but with oil. The United States has declared a national emergency over Cuba, and President Donald Trump is now threatening tariffs on any country that dares to supply fuel to the island. Moscow is calling it what it is: economic strangulation. Russia's foreign ministry says Washington is reviving a decades-old playbook, maximum pressure, outside the United Nations, aimed at suffocating a sovereign state. Maria Zakharova didn't mince words. She says the U.S. is once again trying to choke the island of freedom into submission. At the center of the storm is energy. Trump's executive order lays the groundwork for punishing nations that sell oil to Cuba, a move designed to harden an embargo that has existed since the 1960s. But the timing is explosive. Cuba's main oil lifeline, Venezuela, was cut off earlier this month after the United States seized control of Venezuelan crude following the removal of President Nicolás Maduro. Now, Havana is running on fumes. According to shipping data, Cuba may have just 15 to 20 days of oil left. In the streets of Havana, the impact is immediate. Long queues for fuel, rolling blackouts, food spoiling, hospitals under strain. The Cuban government has declared an international emergency, warning that Trump's campaign is an unusual and extraordinary threat to the nation's survival. President Miguel Díaz-Canel has gone further, accusing Washington of pursuing a policy that is, in his words, fascist, criminal, and genocidal.
And I think that's the best approach, that they negotiate and that a fair agreement is reached so that we can all emerge from this situation as well as possible and avoid further harm to ourselves. More than we already are, because it's truly difficult. You have to live through it. It's truly difficult.
There isn't even medicine.
I think what's coming is going to be very tough. And if this is a queue for dollars, just to get dollars, it's just too much, far too much. Almost 24 hours of waiting in line, and honestly...
Sure.
Afterwards, we Cubans united.
Even the Chinese should be helping us, that's quite clear. This is the best moment for them to help us and to somewhat alleviate the effects of the United States' policy towards Cuba. They really should be doing it. I don't know why they're not. But
Cuba was already in the throes of an economic crisis when the U.S. attacked Venezuela and arrested its president, Nicolás Maduro. As a result, Cubans and some experts say that the island could be facing a potentially catastrophic crisis. This as a result in a halt in oil shipments from Venezuela and now from Mexico. U.S. President Donald Trump has asserted that Cuba is failing, while U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau has claimed that the current government is tottering after 67 years of what he called a failed revolution. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the country is backwards. The Cuban government remains defiant, and the Cuban people are going about their business as usual. The slogan, Patria o muerte venceremos, which means homeland or death we will overcome, still rings true in Cuba. These outages are affecting life every day for Cubans. They are unable to work, they are unable to do their homework, and they are unable to cook. One family in a neighborhood made a makeshift fireplace in front of the building in order to cook their meals and eat every day. Meanwhile, one university student told me that he had to do his homework in the near dark and use a notebook and a pen instead of a computer.
Across Latin America, alarm bells are ringing. Venezuela has condemned the tariffs as punitive, a direct attack on legitimate trade and the Cuban people. Mexico is caught in the crossfire. As Cuba's largest remaining oil supplier, President Claudia Sheinbaum now faces an impossible choice: defy Washington or risk triggering a humanitarian catastrophe on the island. Sheinbaum warns that cutting off fuel could cripple hospitals, food supply chains, and basic services. But any move could provoke retaliation from the White House.
Of course, también sí así. O sea, we don't want to risk more tariffs on Mexico, but simply through diplomatic channels to seek a framework for dialogue and communication that prevents a serious situation for the Cuban people, who are already experiencing a very difficult time. We talked a little about the Mexico-United States relationship. The topic of Cuba was not touched upon. And in the afternoon, this publication comes out, and we will always seek the diplomatic path and make an appeal. First, the self-determination of peoples, and second, to avoid a humanitarian crisis for the Cuban people. Very important that there isn't a humanitarian crisis on the island. So I instructed the Foreign Relations Secretary to discuss this with the United States government, or for them to send the oil. It's a matter of supporting the Cuban people.
Of course, we certainly don't want to risk any further tariffs being imposed on Mexico, but simply...
Trump, however, is unmoved. He's openly suggested that Cuba could collapse pretty soon, and while denying he's trying to choke the island, he's offered no clarity on what happens next or how the United States would manage the aftermath.
So what's your response to Claudia Sheinbaum's warning that the embargo or the restriction on Cuban oil to Cuba could cause a humanitarian crisis there?
Well, it doesn't have to be a humanitarian crisis. I think they probably would come to us and want to make a deal. So Cuba would be free again. They'll come to us, they'll make a deal, but Cuba really has got a problem. They have a problem. I know so many people from Cuba, but we have a lot of people in the United States right now that would love to go back to Cuba, and we'd like to work that out.
What do you want to see from Cuba? I mean, what do you need to see to make that kind of deal?
I think we're going to work a deal with Cuba. I think, we'll be kind. We have a situation that's very bad for Cuba. They have no money, they have no oil. Venezuela, they live off Venezuelan money and oil, and none of that's coming now. And then the president of Mexico, President Sheinbaum, was very good. I said, look, we don't want you sending oil there. And she's not sending oil.
As pressure builds, one question looms larger than ever. How far is Washington willing to go before Cuba finally breaks?
Times of India videos, your daily dose of India and the world. Global news, different views, and sharp analysis.
Pressure of expectation from your fans, your supporters.
That has often served as a backdrop for several Bollywood.
You're not a brute majority anymore. If you individually take out data.
Making sense of global conflicts. Tracking the new emerging world order.
Strike on Israeli military bases.
A multi-pronged.
To stay out of harm's way as Israel started bombing targets across.
Understanding changing alliances in a polarized world. Tune into TOI videos for all this and more. Click on the bell icon to subscribe and never miss an update.